All right, so thank you guys for coming. And I know that this time sometimes doesn't work, and I appreciate you guys juggling your schedules to get here, but we're also recording it, so anyone who wanted to come that you know isn't here, know that we'll share out that recording link so people can watch it at their own convenience as well. So I want to share just a brief history of how we got to the STAR assessment, and then I'm going to be turning it over to Jennifer Thibault, who is one of our incredible learning specialists here at our school, who will be sharing with you more in depth about the assessment and then talk you through the reports that you were given specifically for your child. And those parents who aren't here will be receiving those at conference time from their teachers. All right, so when I first got to Our Lady of Good Counsel, we were using an assessment called the Iowa assessment. And it was so funny to me because we had teachers who had gone to Our Lady of Good Counsel themselves, and they would say, this is the same exact test that I took when I was in second grade. I cannot believe they haven't changed it. And they had it memorized. The teachers had the test memorized. It was quite comical. So the Iowa, we performed really well on it each year. We had students who would get 100% on it, but we never knew how much they actually knew because it was a test in which you could achieve 100%, right? And so we never knew a child's true strengths and their areas in which they were ready to learn. So we made the shift to pilot a computer-based assessment, which was adaptive for students. So the computer-based assessment had thousands, probably millions, of test questions in its bank. And so a child taking the test next to another child, they would not be receiving the same test questions. And a child would get the question right, and regardless of their age, regardless of their grade, it would continue to challenge them. And it was aligned to our standards and allow us to go in depth to see truly what a child knew. So when a child started to get one right, get one wrong, get one right, get one wrong, it would level out. And then we would get their assessment score. We learned that it took some time for kids to learn how to take an assessment on a computer. You have, the little kids who still touch screen everything and don't understand that there's something called a mouse, right? So there were some computer skills that needed to be taught. And then it was also really difficult for the first time to do math computation, seeing it on a screen, and then having to solve the problem on paper, and then record the answer back onto the computer. So there were some test taking skills that we had to get through too. So we knew as teachers and staff, it was going to give us a baseline, but we weren't able to trust it completely right away because we knew that we had some obstacles to get through and kids to get comfortable with taking a computer-based assessment. We also knew that when taking the computer-based assessment, a kid could not score a false high. They could score a false low, meaning they were having a bad day and they didn't perform as good as what they actually could have, but they couldn't score a false high because if a child was guessing, it knew that. And so that was comforting for us as well when looking at data, knowing that, wow, if a child actually scored this score, they actually do know these concepts, and for the first time, we were seeing that in a third grade class, we had students performing here and not here, where we had been instructing them. So around the same time at Our Lady of Good Counsel, we started what was called student support, which has now evolved into learning support, and that is where Jennifer serves into learning support. And we've changed the name from student support to learning support because in the time of developing this program, we have gone from serving solely students, students who might have been performing below standards and filling in any learning gaps that they might have, as well as challenging those students that needed that extra challenge, to equipping our teachers with interventions that can be done in the classroom itself. And our best practice instruction that we've been working on for a few years now is small group instruction. So being able to pull a small group of kids who have this same goal or leveled target and being able to work with them at a small group area in the classroom, and recognizing that kids have different needs and are working and learning at different paces. So being able to pull a small group of kids allows us to tailor instruction to those kids of what they're ready to learn, because it's not necessarily what the whole class is ready to learn. The whole class is receiving whole group instruction on that grade level standard, but we have some students who still have some gaps to fill or are already performing above grade level. So that small group is where we're able to provide them that instruction. So Jennifer and Carol have been working really hard at now providing instructional coaching in the classrooms for teachers. So a teacher that might have been a little apprehensive of pulling a small group, now they have Jennifer sitting right there with them going, all right, we're gonna pull these kids, and would you like for me to show you what this can look like? Or sitting with them and saying, hey, let's look at the data and see what kids we need to be pulling in for what. So Jennifer and Carol have been doing a lot of instructional coaching with our teachers just to equip our teachers with the skills to be able to perform in the classroom and be able to meet our kids' needs. So we went from student support to learning support, because they're helping everyone learn, not just kids, but their colleagues as well. And I learn new things from them every day too. So I'm so grateful to have Jennifer and Carol. So Jennifer's gonna share with us the computer-based assessment that we shifted to last year. That's called the STAR assessment. And our kids last year, at the start of the year, they took the STAR. They also took the NWEA assessment, because that's what we had been using. And we knew with them coming off of quarantine, we wanted as much data as we could possibly gather on them in order to see if learning that they had, if there was any regression there. So we needed to know what our kids knew at the start of last year. And so we did the computer adaptive assessments, 2 of them. And then we also have other informal assessments as well as formal assessments that we do as well with kids, in addition to the computer adaptive assessment. After the fall of last year, we shifted to just the STAR assessment. And last year, you received the report that you have in your hand. You received that electronically as an email. It was attached to an email that your teacher sent to you. We will be doing that again middle of the year and end of the year, but for the beginning of the year, we wanted you to have a hard copy in order for your child's teacher to be able to talk you through it, and for you guys today to be able to have it in your hands as we share with you what the reports mean. The STAR assessment's being used across the Archdiocese now. So every Catholic school has adopted the STAR assessment. It's been advantageous for us at Our Lady of Good Counsel, because the Archdiocese has been providing professional development on this assessment for our teachers. So we're not just learning together as Our Lady of Good Counsel, we're learning together as an archdiocese. And the trainings that they've been able to provide on our common professional development days have really been great. And it's good to know, first, our teachers are always the ones providing the great input at those, because Jennifer and Carol have done an awesome job preparing them for those. And I feel like our teachers are always the ones that are giving other schools great insight, which is wonderful. But it's also great to know that we're learning along with other Catholic schools and can have those dialogues with other Catholic schools, and then eventually be able to start comparing our data to we have what's called PLCs across the AOD, so our second grade teachers get to meet with other second grade teachers, and then we'll be able to start comparing data to see how we're performing based on other Catholic schools, and if there's a Catholic school like second grade is hitting it off the charts, our teachers will be able to learn from them and vice versa. So it's a good thing that we're all using the same assessment tool now, and it allows us to have that comparable data. We know that it is a great thing to compare with other Catholic schools, but you'll see the data that I shared out even at vision casting was our data compared to the national norms, because we also know that when our kids graduate, they're not just competing with other Catholic school students, they're competing nationally. So it's important for us to always remember how our kids are performing nationally, because that's who they're competing against for going into college. So, all right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, and we're excited to dive in deep and learn more about the STAR assessment.
Okay.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Well, thank you for coming. Just a quick background on myself. I've been in education for a little over 10 years now. So anyway, yeah, I just came here 2.5 years ago. I really enjoy it. So yeah, we'll just dive into this a little bit. So I'm going to give today, I'm just going to, So why are we testing our students? So we just don't test our students for no reason. So it's really important that we use what we gain from these, which Melissa kind of went over a little bit. So we want to determine how the kids are performing in comparisons to the norms that we see across the country and within our state and local area. To determine their students' strengths and weaknesses, to provide proficiency, to determine whether they're being proficient in their grade level standards, and also being able to mainly drive our instruction. And that doesn't mean teaching to the test, but that means that we need to take the data that we're getting from this assessment, STAR assessment, and also looking at our classroom assessments and being able to make a determination of whether or not where we can help them grow more as a student. We also test them also because of trying to group them into tiers, which I'm going to get into here in a second. Okay, so there are 3 different types of STAR assessments. There's the STAR Early Literacy, which is our K to 3. Give or take, sometimes our second graders and first graders take the reading and do not take the early literacy, but it's a different test in the fact that it just tests them more on the reading foundations. And then once they hit second grade, or if they're already a fluent reader, then they would take the STAR reading test. And then of course the STAR math test is for first grade through 8th grade. Okay, so these are the STAR windows. So we take the test 3 times a year. We take it in the fall, and then we take it again in the winter, and then we'll take it at the end of the year so that we can see growth. The Archdiocese is asking, they want you to see at least 50% of growth for the year. And they look also at proficiency, and we're going to be looking at whether they're a benchmark or above benchmark. So ideally, we want them at benchmark. All students are not created alike, right? So they're going to have some kids that are going to be below, and that's okay. And that's why we're going to be doing what we're going to do. Okay, so once they take the test, there are different scores that you're going to see on your report, which we'll go over here in a second. But as Melissa was mentioning, it is an adaptive test, which is what's great about it. So it's more catered toward the individual student instead of like a traditional test where it's the same test for everybody. So the STAR bases their scoring system between a 1 and a 1400. So don't panic if you see that your student is nowhere near 1400. That's okay, because it goes as they grow into the higher grades, they're going to hit that closer to 1400 as they're older. So it doesn't have anything to do with like a point system out of 1400 questions or anything like that. So they call those scaled scores, and they also look at they also talk about percentile, which is the percentiles, how many students performed above or below them. So that's what your percentile is. And then of course it goes into the domain scores, which it breaks it down into the different domains. Okay, so all right, so this is the STAR report, which you guys have in front of you if you want to refer as I'm talking about this. On the very top where there is the different colors, that is the AOD benchmarks. And that is, so anywhere, this is their percentiles. So any student that performs at a 0 to 14th percentile, they would be in need of urgent intervention. And then the yellow would be with your 15 to 30 percentile, and they would need, that's intervention, but it's not as intense. And then blue is approaching your benchmark, which is 31 to 59 percentile. And those are the kids that are just on their way. They get a lot of their interventions within the classroom with the classroom teacher. And then at benchmark is 60 to 74 percentile, and above benchmark is anyone that is above and exceeding that 75 percentile. Okay, so this is just an example. So below it has the date of the tests that they took. It talks about their teacher, which type of assessment they had, and you can see like this on here, they had actually taken the STAR literacy, and this was a first grader, and then they had taken the STAR reading because she found that teacher found that was a, they were ready for that. They needed to do the reading test. So as you can see, this child was a 65 percentile in early literacy, and then 87 percentile in math, and reading is, when they took the reading, they're at 82 percentile, so they're right on track. The next page, or I think it's the next page or below that, there's domain scores. So they break it into domain scores, and now there's a little bit of different of scale on this. Now they're looking at percentage. So your beginning, developing, and secure. So if they're between those percentages, then they will be in that category, whether they're beginning in that domain, which are our standards, or developing or secure. Okay, so now that we know the data, now we need to look at how are we going to use the data. So what Melissa had been talking about with bringing us on in the learning support or student support program, we started our MTSS process a couple years ago. And the MTS process is a way, it's a multi-tiered support system, and it's a way for us to be able to progress monitor our students that are struggling, and kids also that might be having behavioral issues, or possibly they are just beyond their benchmark and they just really need some support from an enrichment standpoint as well. So when I had mentioned a while ago that one of the reasons that we test is because we want to put our kids in tiers. And the reason we want to do that is because in the MTSS process, we will take all of our students in the entire school and we put them in tiers. So there's tier 1, which is everybody, every student in the whole school. Our tier 2s are the ones that need more classroom support. And that was the one I said that a lot of times the interventions come from the classroom teacher. And then our tier 3 students are the ones that need intense intervention. So those are yellow and red students. So I just wanted to show you just kind of a visual about what that looks like. So the intensive, just the layer of support. So it's really important that it's almost like we're double dipping. So we're able to come in as a learning specialist, and we can help these students as well as their teacher, as well as the teacher is going to be helping within the classroom. So there's a multi-level of support. And then this is just showing you a visual on our tiers. So tier 3 our goal is to always have the smallest group of tier 3 students. And then obviously our tier 1 is where we want them to be. So part of the main part of our process of getting into, when we go through our MTSS process, is trying to get those kids that are in tier 3 and tier 2 out of tier 2 to tier 1. That's our goal. So our MTS team, we meet once a month. And the people that are included are classroom teachers, administration. Plymouth Canton Community Schools has a consultant. She's been starting this year, coming in, or actually it's via Zoom. And then the learning specialist. And the Plymouth Canton person she's special ed, so she's there for consultation for the teachers and for us as learning specialists too. So we meet monthly, and we just by grade level, and then we discuss the students that are struggling, and we brainstorm ideas, ways that we can support not only the students but teachers as well. So that's where we do the bulk of these are our learning plans for these kids. So we look at data from the teacher. So the teacher will bring data to our meetings and discuss different things that she's noticing in the classroom or he's noticing in the classroom. We looked at our STAR data, and then in-class assessments, and then also if we're working with those students as learning specialists, we can share that information that we've received from those kids too. During that time, we'll set up plans for accommodations in academic, whether it's academic or behavioral interventions for struggling students. And we also discuss and touch base with each other about how's it going? How are we progress monitoring these? How are these accommodations working? What should we keep? What should we get rid of? And then we determine whether or not they are ready to move on out of intervention, which can happen even mid-year, like if they're a student that's in the yellow and they're just on the borderline, and the teachers and everybody on the team decides, you know what, I think they're good. Let's just keep an eye on them. Let's put them to that next tier where we're just giving them less support, but having some support. So it depends, because again, our goal is to get them back into our tier 1. Okay, so this is our criteria, roughly. Math and reading are a little bit different, just slightly. But usually what we do is our 0 to 9 percentile, and you can kind of refer to the benchmarks from the AOD just to kind of get an idea too. But 0 to 9 percentile intense intervention, which usually ends up being about 2 or 3 days a week. And that's a pull-out. We call that pull-out when we pull them out of the classroom and we work with them as learning specialists. We will work with them. And then 10 to 19 percentile is our intervention students, our yellow usually. Usually 2 days a week, but sometimes we pull them out, sometimes we push in. And then our 20 to 30 are definitely more push in and teacher support. So again, it depends on the kid. It might be that they might be in that 20 to 30 percentile that we may push in and work with them in the classroom, or we might like just help the teacher. It just depends on the student and what's going on. And that brings us into instructional coaching. So what we've been doing, Carol and I, is we are working with the teachers to help them go from teaching more traditional to more of a best practice role, meaning in small group instruction, differentiation, meeting those kids where they're at so that they can grow. Gathering, recommending resources for them. We'll look at the data with them. And then, of course, talk to them about their progress monitoring, keeping track of where the kids are at, and then also we will help them with classroom management. And so using the STAR, what the teachers do is they will look, they can determine their groups of their students for the small group instruction and find the common missing gaps. So to give you an idea, if you have a class that you're working on one concept and they might have totally different groups the next time around because they may not need that. So one time they might be working with a certain group out of concept, but then they might be with a different group another time. So it's very fluid. So it just depends on that's why we use that data so that we're able to look at what actual standards they're missing so that we can hone in on that. We also target the students who may need to be challenged. So not only do we help the ones that are struggling, we also look at the fact that there's a lot of kids that are really above that benchmark. So we're not necessarily going to be teaching them that benchmark again when they already have it. So we move them forward from there. So anyway, using the STAR data also allows for differentiation. It drives instruction for a small group. So we take that and look at how we're going to actually teach that small group. And it also develops the students to hit goal sets. So we want to really instill that with the students to really put their own goals into their learning so they can achieve them. So the different resources that support us are our IXL, which I'm sure you've heard of all these, IXL and Freckle. And then obviously we're resources, instructional coaches, and then team teaching, meaning they're working with their partner or their teaching partner, not team teaching as far as like teaching the students, and then STAR reports. So those are the resources that we will use to kind of support that. So that's pretty much it.
Freckle is a resource that the AOD recommended for us because it actually is in alignment with STAR, so the teachers can see what benchmarks or skills that a child is in need of and can assign through Freckle. You heard Jennifer also talk about growth. So, and being able to have an assessment 3 times a year allows us to see that child's growth. As a school, that's what we focus on. So we don't necessarily focus on how many kids are at benchmark. We focus on wherever we have a child performing, did they grow? We want every child to grow at least a year's growth each year. Kids who are performing below benchmark should be growing more than a year in order to fill in those gaps and catch up with their peers, or that expectancy for a grade level. So we measure at OLGC growth of kids, and all of our school improvement goals are based on growth of students. So,
Yes.
Okay, I have several questions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry in advance.
No.
So speaking of growth, are we able, we take the STAR assessment 3 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
Are we able, when we get the reports, to have side by side, like October, January, April, as we continue taking them, so we can see the growth on one report?
That's a good question. That's a good idea.
Because like I pulled Julia's up now, knowing I needed it to come to this meeting,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to compare it.
I don't know if the AOD, the second AOD, did it come with both the scores?
I don't
each time?
believe it did.
Okay.
So the reports we can't run ourselves. The AOD runs them. They're custom for the Archdiocese. The reports that you have in your hands,
Yeah.
and we have to wait for the AOD to then process those. So like every child in the AOD has to finish testing before they can begin processing, before they then give us these custom reports. However, we can run individual reports on kids that are different from what you have on your hand, that I'm sure would give us what it is that you're saying.
Side by side.
Yes,
Or
yeah.
just show, so we can see the growth. Obviously, we could keep the ones, right?
Yeah.
That you give us.
Well, actually, it might even be a good idea to have your student, your child, Julia, if she just keeps track herself too. She could write it down, like make a graph and see how much she's grown herself. Like that would be good for her too.
My question too, so I know that SS score, the max is 1,400 on that, and you said as they get older.
Mm-hmm.
The PR score, are those percentages, like does that go up to 100
Percentile,
percentile?
yeah. So it would be 99, it would be your highest, basically,
And
right?
what about the IRL score?
That's the instructional reading level.
And
So,
what levels are those like, is sixth grade?
yep, yeah, those are actual level, like grade levels, yes.
Okay,
Sorry, I didn't go over that one.
that's okay. And then on the second page, those scores, are those also percentage?
Those are percentages
So
out of 100.
out of 100? Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Now, one thing about that real quick, keep in mind too that they look at, if you look at where the developing is, it's skewed. So if you see 50%, don't panic, right? Because they're not expecting them to be 100%.
Like, so explain that a little bit more.
So if they're not going to expect them to get 100% on the test.
Okay.
It just can't be done because it's an adaptive test.
Yeah.
So it will always help them grow. So they look at it as 50% is more like where most people are.
That helps.
That's more of a
Okay.
average
Okay.
versus like we always think that an average would be like 75%.
So if your child, let's just say hypothetically, scored above 50, then they're above average.
Yep.
On this particular.
Exactly.
That helps a lot.
Okay, no problem. Yes.
Hi, thanks so much for this information.
Oh, no problem.
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
So bear with me. So going forward, this information will it be available on the app?
I don't think so. They send it to us as a PDF.
Okay.
And so moving forward, like middle of the year, end of the year, you'll get an email from your child's teacher and it'll be attached to the email as a PDF.
Okay.
Hopefully that will change in years to come because it would be so much easier to just be able to push it out to everyone.
Right,
So,
and then to have that comparison
right.
for the trimesters as well as for last year. It looks like on my child's report, there was 2 math assessments taken. I don't know if that was specific. to
2
sixth
math?
grade. Yeah, was there a glitch that took place? Is that what happened?
They might have been retested. I mean, I can talk to you and look at, like afterwards, I can talk to you about that. That might have been, they just either needed to retake it for whatever reason, maybe they took too short of a time, and the teacher just felt like maybe we need to retest just to see.
Okay.
But yeah, I can give you more an idea when I see who it is.
Okay, that sounds great. Regarding the resources, so the Freckle and IXL, is that something that they're doing in class?
Yes, but also at home, you can get your username and password to use that at home as well. It's an app on their iPads.
Okay, thank you.
I just had one question regarding the second page, because, you know, some of the specific things are in the beginning, the red, but then like their average PR is not in there, but would they still get pulled for those specific? Like say it's, you know, I don't know, like one part of math is extremely low. Would they get then pulled intervention just for that?
No.
No? Okay.
No, because that's based on, for intervention, we look at their overall percentile.
Okay.
So when it breaks it down into domains, it's kind of when I was talking about, you know, when the groups in the classroom are fluid. So if they're low in one domain, that might be a situation where a classroom teacher pulls them up and teaches them in a lower group with that. I mean, we never refer to them as low groups or high groups or anything like that, but they would teach them that skill level that might be lower than the grade level to bring them up. But then when they do the next lesson, they might be at 80%, so they wouldn't.
So it's just a tool to teach.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then also, yeah, so that you can look at like different concepts that they could work on at home too.
Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't, you know, one thing I didn't do I have like 1 second? Okay, all right. I meant to show you the instruction. Some of you got the instructional report. And it looks like this. If your student is going to be receiving intervention or is already receiving intervention, this is what you will be getting one of these instructional planning. So this will go into the details of the more. And you can see like where this above here is their most recent test, and then below is the projected, where they actually thought that they should be. And as you can see, this student was in the yellow in their most recent, but they actually expected them to be here based off of other tests in the previous years. So this goes into details too about what actual skills, like what we're talking about, like the skills. Let's see if I can scroll down here. Oh yeah, here we go. Well, kind of. Oh, it's in 2 pages, but it'll go down and you can see this student has 3rd grade standards they're missing. And this is a 5th grade student. So that is a really good tool for you as parents to, if you do have a student that's in intervention, that you can look at this and say, oh, this is something we can work on at home. Or, and then also teachers and learning specialists use this so that we can help them at school. So any more questions? Yeah.
Is there any update regarding science assessments?
Not with STAR, so there is not a science component to it. However, our science action team is looking to see how we're assessing kids vertically at Our Lady of Good Counsel. But there is not something across the Archdiocese or with the STAR assessment that's geared to science right now. Yeah. Yes?
Can you talk about how, like, socially, so since kids are being split up into groups, how teachers would handle, like, I don't know, social interactions between students? Like, the student is always in this group, and this, like, do the students know what tiers they're in? How does that look
No.
like to the student's perspective?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. No, teachers are really good about making sure that that is not the focus. I mean, kids, let's be real, like kids are going to kind of notice stuff because that's just the way it is. But no, that's what I mean about it being fluid, because when I was in the classroom, I would tell my students, yeah, you're going to be in this group today, you're going to be in a different group tomorrow. And I did it intentionally, so which I think a lot of the teachers do, intentionally bring them up in different groups. So it's not like the old days where we were in, you know, we're just going to be in work group A or the STAR group or, you know, whatever, and we don't stay in that group the whole time. Okay. Yeah, and they're very fluid with it, and that's a definite conversation that the teachers need to have with their students to make sure that if they hear any of that, that they need to kind of shut that down right away, that it's not about high, low, medium, whatever. It's about just whatever you're learning.
Right, yeah, because
Yeah.
when we went through school, it was like math 1 or math 2.
Yep.
You know, so it's like.
And then you were on that
math
track
2.
forever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm just one of those math 2 kids.
Yep.
Or no, I'm a math 1.
And it's also changing the culture in the classroom to realize that it's okay to be struggling with one thing in math or reading, and it's okay to not, you know, like it needs to be, that's just a whole cultural thing that, you know.
We have seen a cultural shift in the school in itself, and a lot of that's attributed to Leader in Me, with students recognizing that we all have our own unique strengths, our own unique gifts, and it's okay to struggle. Goal setting is something that we should all be doing, including us as adults, and so as we continue to make that shift with Leader in Me, it really has allowed for there to be a cultural shift at the school. Years when student support started, there were kids that would not come out for intervention because they did not want to be that child that had to leave the classroom. That is not the case anymore. And the teachers now, as they become more comfortable with the small group instruction, you'll see them, so you'll have the kids who are supposed to be there for whatever skill it is that they're working on. But then if there's an open seat, you'll see the teacher say, boys and girls, we're working on whatever it might be. Is there anyone else that would like to come and learn more about whatever skill it might be? And so the kids are starting to see it as actually a good thing, and that, wow, like, yeah, I can self-assess myself, and I am struggling on this right now, and want to go to that teacher table in order to get a double dip or more instruction on it. So kids are becoming more in charge of their own learning as well, and it's exciting.
Yeah, we try to, Carol and I try to get into the class. That's one of the reasons we get, I mean, it's not the only reason, obviously, but like that's another reason we want to get into the classroom, so that we can actually get to know and build relationships with these students in the classroom. So then if we do have to pull them out, it's not a big deal. In fact, it gets to the point where they're, like you said, like it gets to that point where they're like, hey, Miss T, I don't know how to do this math problem. Can I come in during your office hours? Absolutely. So it's just an open door, so that, you know, that way it's more of a team, that we're working together as a team. So, yeah.
So then are the students told their scores? in school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and what Jennifer was describing as far as just a tip for Julia of graphing it, we're getting to a point where we want all kids to do that. When they finish taking their assessment, for them to know what their score is and what their goal is for the next time they take it, and to be tracking that progress monitoring piece in their own leadership notebooks. We're getting to a point with Leader in Me where we can do that. And then you'll start to see kids after they take their STAR assessment and they see their score go, yes, because they beat their goal. And that's what we're wanting to strive to get to. So.
Where is that goal assessment? Is that somewhere on here?
So the goals aren't on that particular sheet. They don't have that because we set those ourselves. So if there is certain, like my intervention students, that's one thing we're working on right now is setting goals. So that's something that you can do through STAR, and you can keep track of it and progress monitor them. So that's something that I'm going to be doing, and I know eventually the teachers are going to be doing that too. But it's the kids that actually set up, between the teacher and the student, set up that goal. There is a goal that they give you, for sure, that you need to, you can look at. But we usually make it, like sometimes they're really low for them. Like they can strive a lot higher than that. Or that might be a big struggle for them, so we kind of chunk it down so it's something they can be more successful with.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming from the NWEA world.
Yeah.
They give you,
Yep.
I have no idea where this number comes from, but they'll say, okay, you should score 20 more.
And they do have that, for sure.
Kind of
Yep.
assess if they made that goal or for benchmark, but it's on the report, so that you
Yeah.
can see whatever they've assigned to you to say, this is how much, you should have grown.
And I think, like Melissa was saying, that the AOD is still learning the STAR program anyway, so I think that we're still finding out. In fact, I was funny because I was just looking into the goals, and it's in 3 different places. So just determining where, okay, how can we share that information a lot easier with you guys too. So.
Will the teachers have access to that, like at
Yep.
parent-teacher conference?
And it's similar to NWA with STAR in that if a child is in a lower grade, that goal is going to be a lot more than the upper grade kids. So like with NWA, they might, for a year goal, be striving to achieve a 19-point increase, whereas in 7th grade, it's 1 point or 2 points. So that's similar.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Is this helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Let's show our appreciation.